a lot of times males, they will see penises hanging out. They have urinals and they're just kind of hanging out in there. And they have a chance to look around and say, oh, that penis looks a little different than mine. His is to the right. Mine's kind of hanging to the left. Or, oh, and there's another one that's hanging to the left. So there's someone else who has a penis like mine. But then there's a lot of different ones. So generally, I just feel, at least in my case, that males have more of a chance to compare and see the whole array of the penises that are out there versus females who don't generally see a lot of vaginas and vulvas. Hi, and welcome to episode 9 of Naked Talk with Unprocessed Jess. It's been a while, but I'm back. You may be able to relate, but I have been dealing with some personal issues and life's been a little bit crazy, especially over the summer. But I'm so excited to come back and get on here and start our new series. If it's your first time listening, welcome. I really appreciate you taking the time to let me share some of my life with you and take some of your day. And if you have been listening, I really appreciate you. I've been getting messages from listeners saying that they miss my episodes and wondering when the next one's going to be. And y'all don't know how much that means to me. It is the reason I do this and I keep going, and actually started a podcast was to connect with others and plant that seeds that maybe it's something that you will take away and apply to your own life. And keep those messages coming and let me know if you have questions or how this show has impacted you, and share with someone you think can benefit from it. So welcome back. This series I'm going to do is going to be called V is for Vulva and Vagina, because I want to go back to the basics. I want to talk about our vulvas and vaginas because many people don't know the difference, and we're honestly just referring to the wrong parts of our body. I've mentioned before, and you'll hear me say it throughout this podcast and future episodes, that a lot of times as kids, we are not taught about sex. We don't talk about it, or we're really made to feel ashamed about it. So we just shy away from it, right? We just know, oh, it's bad. We're not going to talk about it. Or we'll see, maybe we're watching a movie on TV and our parents will quickly hide our eyes or turn it off. And I'm just as guilty. I have 3 girls. And I found myself doing that until I heard one day that maybe you shouldn't just do that and freak out and hide it, because it just gives them that impression that it's bad, but you can talk about it in that situation if it's not appropriate and say what's not appropriate about it. And that's something that's good. But let's be honest, most of us didn't even hear about it, or if we did, it was from a source that may not have been the best. So I want to change that. I want to start talking about it. And to reach us who are in our adulthood, some of us have kids. I know I did before I started learning a lot of things. I turned 40 and I just really made a change in my life. My sex drive changed a lot, and that's something that a lot of people don't talk about. It can go either way. You can feel like you have a low sex drive, and then that puts you on a tangent of, do I take hormone replacement or, all pellets or all these different things. And that's a whole other issue we might touch on later. But if not, if we have a higher sex drive, either we're not talking to our partner about it, who is the one that we should be talking to about it, right? Or we're talking to other people and they can't understand us, so we shy away from it. So that being said, I want to touch on that, and let's just cover the basics and then we can move forward. So think about it. A lot of times males, they will see penises hanging out. They have urinals and they're just kind of hanging out in there, and they have a chance to look around and say, oh, that penis looks a little different than mine. His is to the right. Mine's kind of hanging to the left. Or, oh, and there's another one that's hanging to the left. So there's someone else who has a penis like mine. But then there's a lot of different ones. So generally, I just feel, at least in my case, that males have more of a chance to compare and see the whole array of the penises that are out there versus females who don't generally see a lot of vaginas and vulvas as they're growing up or maybe even in college. So we're not seeing different ways that they're created. And so it leaves us with one idea of what it should look like. I remember, probably like most kids, I remember seeing my mom naked, like when she'd come out of the shower. I mean, I have 3 girls, and it's a good thing I do because I'm naked a lot. I'm busy. I'm running 100 miles a minute, and my kids will come in the restroom, and I'm out of the shower or walking around looking for a bra or something. So, but once again, it's kind of tucked in and away, so it's not so obvious. And I have a sister, but it's just different. So growing up, I didn't look at porn or different things like that as a kid, or a lot of private parts of other people growing up. So I was very limited in my understanding. And honestly, I didn't pay much attention to my vulva, much less my vagina. I mean, I knew it was there. I knew we didn't touch it, especially in front of other people. But I remember seeing Fried Green Tomatoes. I don't know if you've seen this. If you haven't, love that movie. It's one of my favorites. And there's a part where a character played by Kathy Bates, I think her name was Evelyn, she decides to go to this women empowerment group, and they tell everyone to get out a mirror and that they're going to look at their vaginas, and she kind of like gets uneasy about it. And I remember seeing that and thinking like, oh my gosh, that's like crazy. I'm not going to do that. I think at this point I was, I don't know, maybe in 9th grade, and I'm sure I had made out with guys and things like that. But still, once again, I just thought, okay, I'm not going to do that. And then on top of that, I, in middle school, was invited to church by a good friend of mine, and his parents were family friends of ours. And he invited me to a church, and it was called North Central Assembly of God. So it's a Christian church, a denomination of Christianity. And I went to the youth group there, and I loved it. And I was just a great escape from some of the things I was dealing with in life. And, became a Christian, gave my heart to Christ at church camp. And so a lot of times when you're doing that and you're new in your faith, you want to make sure you don't do anything wrong. So I really was like, okay, something like masturbation was just out of the question. So all of that to say, which is crazy that I'm even saying that, because until recently I didn't even talk about sex to anyone. And that's kind of crazy because I'm an adult, I'm married, and I have 3 kids. So anyway, but then as time went on, I pretty much, thought, okay, vagina, I know a penis is going to go in there one day and a baby's going to come out of there. That was kind of the extent of it. And I planned on saving myself for marriage, but went away to college. And I remember being 21, which is so silly looking back now. I'm 41, and I see 21-year-olds, and I see how young they are and how much they have ahead of their lives. But at the time, I thought, man, am I ever going to get married? And I don't know if I want to keep holding out this long. So I did have sex with my boyfriend at the time. And that was my limited knowledge of what sex should be like, what it should feel like. And that's a topic we'll get into later with the whole, wanting to know a little bit more about sex before we actually have it. And how when we are with someone, that's just a very limited view of how it's supposed to be. So now I've had sex. So I got the penis going in part down, right? And I know one day a baby's going to come out of that. And that was kind of the extent of it. And if you've heard my story, if not, you can go back to episode 1. It does sound like I'm definitely not as conversational as I am now, because it was my first episode of my podcast. I was really nervous and it was hard to share. But if you want to go back, you can listen to it there. And you'll find that I left my daughter's biological father when I was 10 months pregnant. I mean, when she was 10 months old and I was barely pregnant with my second child. So I left there not feeling exactly confident. And now I had had a baby, and all kinds of changes happen in your body and especially your vagina. And then I had her vaginally. So I definitely wasn't dealing with my vagina at that point. And I felt horrible about myself, and I just felt really broken as a person. So here I am, had one baby, left their father, pregnant with another one. And here pops, good old fried green tomatoes again. So this is 2005. And the movie comes on again, and I see this part about the empowerment, thing, and the women, you looking at their vaginas. And I thought, I can do this. I'm going to just go get my little mirror and look at my vagina. Yeah. I would not recommend doing that. If you're really diving into looking at your vulva and vagina for the first time, being pregnant, it's not that it's horrible, but it does change when you're pregnant. And so I don't recommend you looking at it thoroughly for the first time pregnant, unless you just want to, but just be prepared. So that didn't go too well. On top of, I think, my mental, and emotional state that I was in. So I just thought, oh my gosh, I just had really poor body image. But I still didn't know the difference between a vulva and a vagina. And so why is it even important? Well, one, it's your body. And so we need to know the parts of our body and how to refer to them. And two, health-wise, when you're talking to your gynecologist, it's helpful to refer to the right things when you're communicating with them so they can give you the best options and really get a better understanding of what you're going through. So I want to talk today about just going over the basics of a vulva and a vagina and a few parts that are around there. I want to say something that I saw in a book. I met this lady, Beth Liebling, and it's Liebling. I'll put her book in the show notes, but she has a book called Love and Laughter, Sexy, Meaningful Fun for Everyone. I met her a few months ago at a podcast movement. It's a big podcast conference. And the cool thing is she's from Houston. So I live in Houston too, or outside of it. So we connected. She is so wonderful. And I love this book because she takes an approach to sex in a really lighthearted way, but also shows how it can revitalize your relationship and just enhance your life. So I definitely recommend you check out her book. But when I was going through it, what I liked is she has pictures of different vulvas and vaginas in there, and penises too, but it kind of really puts them side by side and shows that there is no normal. They're all different. I know when I looked at mine, I thought, okay, so I know I told y'all I didn't watch porn growing up, but I did watch it a few times with a boyfriend of mine. And he's like, hey, let's get this, I don't know, Debbie Does Dallas or something, cheesy like that. And I thought, oh my gosh, that does not look like mine. It was just did not look like mine. So without going into too much detail, before you beat yourself up over it, know that everyone is different and it can change with age, hormonal things. So give yourself some love and know that your vulva looks the way it was supposed to be. Now, obviously, if you have problems or you're, noticing things that aren't right, always talk to your doctor. But once again, it's good to know you can tell them it's your vulva. It's the outside, not your vagina. So what is a vulva? It's basically the external or the outside part. And a lot of times the part that you can see, right? Without digging in there. And it's called lips is what they refer to. And there's one on either side. And then if you go to the top of the vulva, there's something called a clitoris. Some people say clitoris. I personally don't use the word very often, but I usually say clitoris. And that's towards the top, and it has a little covering on it. So that's something maybe some men don't even know that. And a lot of times they don't like asking for directions. So it's good to know that to kind of guide them that there is something under there, but it is sensitive. And then if you go below the clitoris, there's your urethra. And this is where the pee comes out. And you know what's so funny, y'all? I thought for the longest time that pee came out of the vagina. Like I remember I never wanted to wear tampons because I was scared. You know, as a kid, I thought, is this going to not make me a virgin? Like, is it going to break my hymen and all this crazy stuff? So I wore pads, which is crazy thinking back now with the activities I did. But I thought, okay, that it was the same thing. But it's not. Your urethra is where your pee comes out. And then your vagina is that, like, muscular tube. And it goes from the external part, the part you can see, to the, like, right where you can see the opening to the cervix of the uterus. So a way that you can kind of be aware of this is to do something called Kegel, or some people say Kegel, or pelvic floor exercises. And it's kind of like you want to think about flexing your muscles, like if you want to make a fist or flex your bicep or something, but you want to flex your pelvic floor muscles and you'll feel them squeeze, and you might even feel that in your bottom as well. And that's the vagina. And so another thing, as I got older, you know, and you hear about penises and the size of penises and does size really matter and all these things. Well, after I had seen more than one penis and seen a few, I thought, okay, they're all different, you know, but the average size of the vagina, even though it can vary, it's like just under 4 inches, I think. So really, y'all, I mean, a lot more than that is really just excess. So I don't know if you're listening and have a penis, like, you might want to look into that. And I know everyone's different. But once again, these are things that we don't talk about. So anyway, these Kegel exercises are important. I have been really good about doing these, especially after I had my girls, because I would freak out that you hear all these things that, you know, oh, I can't even think of what the guys used to say about women that, you know, had kids, or stuff would just fall right out, or I don't know, but it was like putting your, I think, penis in a cup of warm water or something crazy like that. So I was just so freaked out. So I'm really good and intentional about doing these. And the cool thing is, especially if you're a multitasker and if you're a male listening, you can actually do these as well. And it helps keep things going down there and keep things nice and tight as well. But I digress. So you can do those while you're doing anything else, you know. I mean, you can be cooking, walking, driving. At my other house, I used to have a certain street, and I knew from Texas Laurel to the gate of my street, I would do Kegels the whole way. And it's like anything else. If you're going to do crunches, just work it into your day, and you'll be really surprised. I'm going to have someone called the Vagina Coach on later in the podcast episodes, and she's going to go into more detail, but just know that there are things that you can do naturally to keep your vagina in good shape. I want to touch briefly, we're going to talk about this in more depth in another episode, but, you know, so here I am, turned 40 last year, and, you know, like most people, I'm pretty natural, but things do bother me, you know, gray hair. I see more gray hair coming on my, you know, coming out and growing faster. I have a wrinkle that's starting to form. She shows up when I frown, but now she wants to stay around longer and longer. And I don't know if she's going to decide just to permanently stay on my face. So I do think about these things, but now I'm thinking, okay, first my face, you know, but now I got to worry about down there too, like my vagina and all this surgery. So I started hearing about labiaplasty and vaginal rejuvenation, and I thought, oh my gosh. So I reached out to my cousin. I'm like, hey, have you ever heard of this? So we start kind of talking about it. And labiaplasty is actually, it's like a surgery where you alter or change the appearance of that labia that I was talking about earlier of your vulva. I guess the idea I'm thinking is to cut it and make it shorter, and make it look more vibrant. I'm not sure. But then there's also a non-surgical laser rejuvenation you can do, which actually my doctor in Houston does that, Dr. Nico, and I thought about trying that out as well. It's non-surgical, and they take like a kind of a wand instrument is what it looks like, and they insert that into your vagina and use laser and something else, and it's supposed to just increase firmness and elasticity and stimulate all the tissue down there. So I don't know. Well, if I can make that work, we'll see what happens. But I just want y'all to be aware and know that just like with any elective surgery, it needs to be done for the right reasons. And ask yourself, just like a lot of things in your life, why are you doing it? Is it because you're thinking that's what it should look like? Is it because it'll bring you confidence? One of the things I love about this podcast versus just being a blogger, which I've been for 8 years, one is the feedback that I've gotten in just the, 8 episodes I've done. I'm getting great feedback because you know what? I'm just talking to you the way I would a friend, and that's how I want you to feel, and I want you to reach out. If I don't know the answer, I'll try to find one for you or point you in the right direction. I try to be as honest as I can that I am definitely on the more natural side. I don't wear makeup most days. Some days I do put concealer on and some gloss and mascara. But I also know that sometimes people choose to have elective surgery, and that's okay, as long as it's for the right reasons for them. I've shared before in my blog that I nursed, breastfed my 3 girls, and after my 3rd daughter, she just did a number on my boobies and my nipples. Like, the kids would come in the room while I was nursing, and she would just turn her head to look and see who was there, but she would proceed to keep my nipple in her mouth. So, yeah, it was painful, and it just did a number on my nipples. And I just told my husband, look, no matter how much I work out, no matter how healthy I eat, these 2 things are still going to look like chicken nuggets with nipples hanging off. And I did elect to have breast surgery done. I was very adamant that I wanted them to look very, very natural, be the size that they were before I had children, so that they would go with my body frame. And I went to Dr. Nico in Houston here, and he probably wanted to say like, okay, shut up, lady. I got it. Natural. Got it. And almost to the point where most people do not know. If it comes up in conversation or we talk about it, they don't know. So all that to say, I'm letting you know, I always want to try to be on the natural side of things. If there's things we can do it. But I'm also not judging anyone who has that. So now that I've gotten that off my chest, speaking of chest, and then remember, once again, if you go back to my story, if you don't know, I met my husband the first time in 99. I was 21, had no kids, tight body, nice perky breast. And then we reunite later. I've had 2 children, body image, emotional issues from my relationship that was very toxic. And I remember telling him, like, look, dude, basically, when we did have sex, that, like, I don't feel good about my breast. I don't feel confident with my body. But you know what? He must have liked it because he put a ring on it and we got married. So all that to say, you will have changes after childbirth, but give yourself some grace and love your body. The best thing you can do is communicate with your spouse and let him know what you're feeling. And if you are a guy listening, just keep in mind that your wife might be going through a lot of changes, and it's just good to talk about it, because if you don't, it's just going to get worse, or you're going to avoid the situation. And sex is meant to be fun and to connect. So that's all I have today. Keep in mind, too, one more thing about those vulvas and vaginas. You want to keep them nice and moist. And as you get older, it can be age, hormonal changes, pregnancy, or stress. It's good to have a lube. And I've mentioned this before. I never really, talked about lubricant or anything like that. Honestly, recently just started looking into it, and you want to use a really good quality one. I like Almost Naked by Good Clean Love. It's an organic one, but Beth has the author of the book I was talking about. She has them as well. Her place in the Heights in Houston is called Darling Way, But she also has darlingway.com, and she has a good selection there as well if you're not in the area but you want to order some. So thanks for listening. I'm excited to bring you another episode of this V is for Vagina series. And be sure to subscribe so you know when my new episode comes out. You can go to nakedtalkpodcast.com and find the episodes on there as well as my blog and also on my Instagram. And just message me if you have any questions. Like I said, if I don't know, I'll try to find the answer. And I will talk to you in the next episode. Bye.